Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome everyone. We are here to discuss a verse from the Bhagavad Gita today. So we are on chapter 2, verse 38. So I'll read the Sanskrit and the English, and then we'll chant some invocation prayers, and then we'll discuss. So chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized, verse number 38. Sukha dukhe same kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. Sukha dukhe same kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. Sukha dukhe same kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. Sukha, happiness. Dukhe, and distress. Same, in equanimity. Kritva, doing so. Labha, alabho, both profit and loss. Jaya, jayo, both victory and defeat. Tata, thereafter. Yuddhaya, for the sake of fighting. Yujyasva, engage, fight. Na, never. Evam, in this way. Papam, sinful reaction. Avapsyasi, you will gain. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin. Purport. Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjun should fight for the sake of fighting, because he desires the battle. There is no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or gain, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness. That everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna is transcendental consciousness. So there is no reaction to material activities. He who acts for his own sense gratification, either in goodness or in passion, is subject to the reaction, good or bad. But he who has completely surrendered himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness is no longer obliged to anyone, nor is he a debtor to anyone, as one is in the ordinary course of activities. It is said, Devarshi bhuptapta nirnam pitrinam nakinkaro nayam rinicharajan sarvatmana ya sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parihritya kartam. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone, not the demigods, nor the sages, nor the people in general, nor kinsmen, nor humanity, nor forefathers. Bhagavatam 11:541. That is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjun in this verse, and the matter will be more clearly explained in the following verses. So we'll just chant some invocation prayers to invoke blessings of our teachers and the Lord, and then we'll continue our discussion. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamstra Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So, as I said, we're discussing chapter 2, verse 38. So, hands up, is it anyone's first time here to a Bhagavad Gita class today? I mean, like, you've come before? Not to, oh, first time to the class, though. Well, welcome. So, we'll start off with a bit of a summary of, like, how we got here to this verse in the Bhagavad Gita. You all know about the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah? So Bhagavad actually means God, and Gita means song. So Bhagavad Gita is the song of God. It's actually a conversation between Lord Krishna and Arjun. They're in the middle of a battlefield, and they're about to start fighting. And yet they have this very long conversation. Well, it seems very long to us. It was only actually 45 minutes when it was spoken. And it covers so much. And we're only at the beginning. So what happened? So in chapter 1, Arjun is pretty much speaking in that chapter, and he outlines 5 main reasons why he doesn't want to fight, right? So does everyone know a little bit about the Mahabharata, right? Like there was a battle between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, right? Arjun is in the side of Pandavas. And he's fighting against his own cousins. The Kauravas are his own cousins, you know? He gives 5 main reasons. So the first one is compassion. Like, he's fighting against his family here, you know? And on the opposing side, he's got his cousins, his uncles, his grandfathers, so many elders. And they actually looked after him when he was growing up, you know? So it's like, how can I fight against them? How can I even want to kill them, you know? The second reason he gives is enjoyment. So he says, even if I kill them, I'm not going to be able to enjoy anything afterwards. After like defeating them and killing my own family members, like I just won't be able to be happy. The third reason he gives is it's just going to destroy the whole family, because they are ultimately one family, like they're just part of an extended family. And he says by killing the elders, it's going to destroy the dynasty. It's going to vanquish the family tradition and religious practices as well. And people in the family will engage in irreligion, and that's going to lead to women not being protected, and that they'll be misled then into adultery, which will lead to unwanted progeny, and that's going to create a hellish life for everyone. So that was the third reason, that it's going to destroy the family and religious practices. The fourth reason is he was fearing sinful reaction. So he says he will have to take on sinful reaction for killing his superiors who are actually worshipable. So, you know, Dronacharya, who was his teacher, who taught him the art of archery, you know, the art of fighting with a bow and arrow. He was his guru. He taught him. So it's like, how can you kill your own teacher? You know, like, I'm going to get so much sin for this, Arjun was saying. And the fifth reason is he's just not decided. He's indecision. Like, he just cannot be convinced that by conquering his enemies is actually better than being conquered by them. He thinks that, the kingdom's doing absolutely fine under Duryodhana's rule, so why do the Pandavas need to fight to, take over the kingdom to rule it for themselves. And he wonders, like, is it really worth like millions of people dying in this battle just so that Yudhishthir, who's his elder brother, would be enthroned, and his family would take over the rule? Is it really worth so much bloodshed? So that's what happens in chapter 1. And then we move on to chapter 2, where he just completely breaks down. He's like, I don't want to fight. He puts down his bow and arrow and he says, I don't want to fight. And then that's when Krishna starts to speak. So actually, chapter 2, as I said, is called Contents of the Gita Summarized. And actually, everything in the Gita is summarized in this chapter. You'll find everything in the Gita here, but it's all elaborately then explained in further chapters. So Krishna then begins speaking, and he addresses each of Arjun's concerns, or the reasons that Arjun gives for not wanting to fight. So in chapter 1, verse 36, Arjun says, sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? So what is he saying? He's saying sin, right? So the reason he gives in that particular verse is, I'm going to get sinful reaction if I do this. So in the verse we're discussing today, Krishna is addressing that concern of Arjun's, that he's going to get sin. So he explains how he's not going to get sin, right? So shall I read the translation again? So he said, this is Krishna speaking to Arjun. He says, do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by so doing, you shall never incur sin. So he directly answers that point, that if you fight, you won't get sinful reaction. So we also read in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, he talks about like reactions, so bad reactions, good reactions, etc. So we'll talk a little bit today about karma. Has everyone heard about karma? Yeah? How would you describe it if you had to explain it to someone? In a few words, like how would you describe karma? Mm-hmm. Sorry? The repercussions of your actions. Yeah, exactly. So actually, Bhagavad Gita, karma, there's a few different ways that word is used. So karma actually means action. But it also means, when we're referring to good action and bad action, it actually also refers to the good action. So Bhagavad Gita explains there's two types of actions, right? Karma, which is, we say, good action, and vikarma, which means bad action. And in the Ishopanishad, which is another scripture we have, it explains in a little bit more detail what is good action and what is bad action. So I'll just read out the definition. So it says, actions that are performed in terms of one's prescribed duties, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures, are called karma. And actions that are performed through the misuse of one's freedom and that direct one to the lower life forms are called vikarma. So in essence, karma is, if we're following what it says in scriptures and we're performing our prescribed duties, then these are good actions. But if we're doing the opposite, basically, then these are bad actions. So, you know Newton's third law? Anyone know Newton's third law? Any scientists? Ex-scientists? So it says that, sorry, yes? Yes, brother? Yeah, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So suppose, like, you've got a stomach ache and you go to the doctor. What do you think the doctor's going to ask you? Sorry? What? What is the cause? Right, but and what do you think the doctor will do to try and find out? He'll probably ask you some questions, and he probably will ask you, oh, what did you eat last night? Right? Why does the doctor ask that? Because he knows that whatever is happening now is an effect of some kind of cause, right? So you probably ate something last night. It's likely, not guaranteed, but it's likely you ate something last night, and that's what's causing the pain. So there is some connection, cause and effect. Because every effect that we're seeing now, there is some cause to it in the past. Anything we do now, any action we initiate now, there will be an effect in the future. And karma is a law that is inescapable. So we have many laws in this world, right? Like, I mean, think about in the society we live in. We have law and order, right? We have a justice system. So, like, if people are following the rules, then, they're left alone. No one really bothers them. But if you misbehave, if you go against the law and order, then, you're put into jail, or you could be fined or whatever. Some sort of punishment is given. So similarly, if we're stepping back a little bit, in the world, we also have nature's laws. Like gravity, law of gravity exists, right? Like, if you jump in the air, you're definitely not going to stay there, right? Unless you've got some kind of equipment to help you stay there. But gravity means, we will come back down. So similarly, the law of karma exists, and we can't escape it. It's there. And it's not partial either. Everybody is subject to it. So for example, a little girl, she may not know that fire burns. She may put her hand on a flame. But just because she doesn't know that it's going to burn her, does that mean the flame won't burn her hand? No, it will, right? Because ignorance is not an excuse, right? Whatever happens, there is an effect. We can also see that, there's so many cars, right, that are driving in the country, up and down, up and down. Does everyone have an accident just because they're driving? No. We hear of some accidents, right? But compared to the number of cars that are on the road and how many people are driving, there's very few accidents, right? Is that just a coincidence that only some people meet with an accident and some don't? So just something to sort of ponder on. So some people say, oh, we come to this world empty-handed, like we have nothing, and also we leave with nothing. But that's not technically true, because we do carry baggage from our previous lives. And after the end of this life, we're also going to carry forward our karma. So whatever activities we performed in this life, there will be reactions to it, and that may follow on into our next life. As long as we have good karma, we will enjoy. So a lot of us are, we're doing okay. We have a comfortable life, maybe some trouble, but generally good life. But once we hit some kind of trouble, we're like, why do we suffer? Because the results of bad actions also come. It's not just the result of good actions that we've performed. And, modern theory is like YOLO, right? You only live once. So it's like birth and death. And that's it. Life is just in between the two, right? But actually, our scriptures tell us that's not quite true. There is something. There is something before birth, and there is something after death as well, right? And so we should be mindful of that whenever we're performing activities. If there was nothing before birth and there was nothing after death, how can you explain somebody being born in a wealthy family versus somebody being born in the slums, right? How could you explain a newborn child who's just been born and then is diagnosed with some sort of brain defect, how does that even make any sense? Can it just be chance? It just makes no sense. So we spoke a little bit about the concept of karma. And we can also talk about karma in a few different ways. So sometimes we see, but this person is performing some bad activities, but nothing's happening to them. How many times have we come across that? Someone's doing something not so great, but they're not suffering a reaction. Shivara Gokula Nanda ki jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Gaurantai ki jai. So why do we think that happens, Or sometimes the question occurs, why do good things happen to bad people? We somehow define people to be bad and then say, but so much good is happening to them. They're so well off, But scriptures actually say that every action, every activity we perform is like a seed sowing process. After you sow a seed, what happens? It sprouts, it grows, and then it gives some fruits. And then what happens? And then you harvest it, right? So every action that we perform, it takes time for the result to fructify. And that time can differ. So for example, rice, if you grow rice, actually in 4 months, you'll get the rice grains. Whereas if you grow mangoes, it's mango season right now, isn't it? It takes 4 to 5 years once you plant the seed for the tree to grow and develop fruits. A jackfruit tree actually takes 8 years. right? So similar to how like different foods grow at different times, the reactions to our activities, they also vary in terms of when we'll get them. It's not that I'm going to perform an action now and I'm going to get the results straight away after. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes like I'll have said something not so nice maybe, and then instantly I like stub my toe or like hit myself somewhere, and I'm like, oh, that was like karma. I just said something really bad or did something bad. But sometimes, you know, we come across something happens to us and we're like, why did this happen to me? Like, I haven't done anything. So there's instant karma where, you know, immediately we'll get a reaction, and then there's delayed karma where we don't know when it's going to happen. It could be later in our life. It could even span into another lifetime as well. So another example of that is like, I know like when I eat something very cold, like slush puppy, I think sometimes I get a sore throat, right? So that's like instant. Think about smokers. Do they like instantly develop lung disease like after having one cigarette? No, usually it's like after many years of smoking continuously, then they get, you know, the reaction to it. So instant versus delayed. In actually the Mahabharata, there's a story of, you know, Dhritarashtra. So he was the uncle of Arjun. So Arjun's father was Pandu and his brother was Dhritarashtra. And he was also the father of like the Kauravas who were fighting. And obviously we know the outcome of the battle. So all of the sons of Dhritarashtra, he had 100 sons. They all died at the end, right? The Pandavas won, the Kauravas lost, and they all died. So he asked Krishna, like, why did I have to go through the suffering of losing 100 sons? Like, why were my 100 sons killed? And Krishna said that 50 lives ago, you were a hunter. And you were out hunting, you saw a bird, and it was a male bird, and you tried to kill the bird, but it flew away. So out of anger and frustration, you actually ended up killing the 100 baby birds of that male bird. And that male bird saw as well, you know, in front of his eyes, the babies died. And so naturally, he was going to suffer a reaction from it. But why did he not get the reaction instantly? Because he needed to accumulate enough good karma, piety, to actually even have 100 sons in the first place. And that took him 50 lifetimes to have enough good karma to get 100 sons. So it's very complicated. It's not as easy as we think, you know? Then we also have like, okay, we understand that things happen to us. Like we do something and then we get a reaction for it. But what about when there's like natural calamities or like a plane crash where like a whole group of people suffer and like they don't even know each other, right? Sometimes. What about that? Like it can kill people in thousands, you know? But actually that's because there's a big karmic account to settle. Everyone's done something and, you know, arrangements were made in such a way that they were all brought together and they had to go through that. There's a story of how like there was an earthquake once and, you know, the rescuers kind of, you know, for many days afterwards, they go under the rubble and try and see, you know, like what they can find. And they went to a house and this was like a few days after the earthquake. And they found a very, very small baby that was still alive, like latched onto the mother and had survived. The mother had died, but the baby survived, you know? So obviously it wasn't in the baby's karma to die like that. The baby was to survive, but the mother's karma was to die. So we often hear of these stories. Even in plane crashes, sometimes, you know, there are survivors. Or even like some people just missed their flight and, you know, got saved, like, if, you know, when there was a plane crash. We hear so many stories. So, yeah, so we discussed a little bit about karma and different types and why there may not be an instant reaction, etc. So what about those who are ignorant? Like we spoke about, you know, there is a law of karma, not everyone might know about it. So what happens then? Does that mean we're exempt? No, not necessarily, because scriptures say that ignorance is not an excuse. You have to get the knowledge. We have to educate ourselves on the law of karma. It's our responsibility to know. It's not God's responsibility to know. He's given us everything. There's a story of how there was a man, he was driving, and he stopped at a red light. And he saw that, okay, he'd stopped, but then there were still some buffaloes, and they were crossing, like, but it was a red light. And he was like, why do I have to follow the rules, but the buffaloes don't have to? So he's like, I'm not going to follow the rules. I'm just going to jump the light as well. So he also jumped the light. And then he got stopped by a police officer. And then the police officer was like, why did you jump the light? And he said, well, these buffaloes didn't follow the rules, so why should I have to follow the rules? And the police goes, well, you're an even bigger buffalo than these buffaloes. He's like, you don't make any sense, you know? Like, the buffaloes, like, they don't have that intelligence to know, you know? So similarly, you know, it's our responsibility to know the traffic rules, you know? It's not that we're exempt. For example, if you go to a restaurant to eat, right? Suppose you order some food, and then at the end, what happens? You get the bill, right? Now, suppose you order all this food, and then you're like, the waiter comes to give you the bill, and you say to the waiter, I didn't know I was supposed to pay to eat here, right? What do you think the waiter's going to say? Is he going to say, oh, that's fine, don't worry, you can go. You don't have to pay for your food. Is he going to say that? No, he's not going to say that. Why? Because there are rules, right? If you go, you order something, you eat, then there is exchange. You have to pay for it. So they're not just going to let you go because you didn't know. So ignorance is not an excuse. So similarly, you know, if we don't follow the laws of material nature, then we have to pay. And actually it said that because of our sinful reactions, that's why ignorance is there. We must have done something previously where we don't even have the opportunity to learn about certain things, you know, for example, to learn about karma, to learn about God. So we're just caught up in this cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, and karma keeps us bound, right? So if we look at our lives, we're born, we grow up, you know, we definitely have some kind of disease. Nobody grows up without even just like having a minor cold, I bet. And then we hit old age, and eventually we all die, right? We're all subject to these. And karma is there throughout our lives, and it's keeping us bound because life after life, we are taking birth in different bodies. So what is it that we need to learn then from karma? Because it's binding us here, right? What is it that we need to learn? So there are 6 points that I wanted to make. So the first one is, karma is very complex. So there was once a king, and he wanted to feed some brahmanas. So he got his cooks to make like a makeshift kitchen, and they cooked a really nice meal, and they fed all these brahmanas, and the brahmanas all died. Like, nobody knew what happened. So Yamaraj, who's known as like the superintendent of death, and he like at the end of life, you know, he'll look at what people have done and then decide accordingly who goes where. So he looked at the file, and he found that an eagle had been flying over with a dead snake in its mouth over that makeshift kitchen, and there was poison dripping from this snake's mouth, and that poison had gotten into the food, and that's what had poisoned the food, and that's why the brahmanas had died. So naturally, one would think, okay, maybe then the snake's going to get a reaction, or the eagle's going to get a reaction, maybe, you know? So, but one day Yamaraj said, no, actually, we're going to punish this lady. There was a flower lady. So all of his, like, assistants were, like, baffled. Like, why? Like, what's this flower lady got to do with anything? Like, it could be the cooks, because they were cooking. It could be the eagle or the snake. Like, why this lady? So Yamaraj said that actually what happened was many, many years later, the woman, she was at a certain place, and some other brahmanas had come, and they were asking for directions to the palace. And she laughed, saying, oh, you want to go to that king? You want to go to that place? But so many brahmanas were killed there many years ago. So she was mocking, like, the whole situation. So nobody except the woman had actually expressed happiness or some kind of joy from that whole situation. You know, it wasn't a pleasant situation. She actually mocked, and she found some sort of happiness almost from it. So Yamaraj said because she found pleasure in that situation, she's going to get the sinful reaction for it. So sometimes, even if we don't act, you know, in a negative way, we don't physically do something, if we mock someone, if we feel pleasure at someone else's mistakes, then their sin can also transfer to us. So karma is very complex. And, we don't always have to try and understand because it is very complex. The second thing is, well, one can say, well, I don't remember what I've done. We can't even remember what we were when we were younger, let alone in previous lives. So we shouldn't necessarily try and dig deep to try and find out the reason, because if we try and just remember things, it can hinder our progression and actually can scar us mentally as well if we really try and remember, go deep into everything we may have done this life or previous lives. We just have to remember that the lesson is just being taught to us in a way that we can learn it right now. And we should just try and focus on the present lifetime. And in chapter 15, verse 15, Krishna says that I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, forgetfulness, and knowledge. So he will reveal to us whatever it is that we need to know, whatever it is that we need to remember. He'll give us the knowledge at the right time. The third point is that other people, other situations, other things, they're not always the cause of our suffering. So it's not that just by knowing the law of karma, our suffering goes away, right? But at least it helps us to understand and know why, right? The principle. So day to day, a lot of us, we often get stuck because of this fundamental point. We often think that I'm in a certain problem, I'm suffering because of this person, or because of this situation, because this event didn't go well, because my family didn't listen to me, because my children don't listen to me, My partner's not a good person. But everyone carries baggage. And if we just try and remember that, then we don't get frustrated when we're dealing with situations when other people are acting in a way that perhaps isn't in a way that we want them to, because it's a mix of their baggage and our baggage. So we shouldn't think it's unfair, all the time, this is happening to me. No, it's our karma. Let's just accept that. When you understand the law of karma, even if someone misbehaves with you, at least you will understand why, right? Because they're also going through something, and you probably have some sort of karmic exchange that needs to happen. And often what happens is when we have not expected something and we haven't accepted something, then it frustrates us, right? But if we accept situations, if we accept people in our life, then we can be peaceful. The fourth thing is, so we understand the principle of karma and how it works. So that means I'm going to get a reaction for everything I do. Does that mean I shouldn't act? I should just kind of do nothing? Some people believe we should work hard and then we'll definitely get the result. But they don't believe in previous activities and previous results are going to impact things right now. Some people believe what's the point in working hard? Everything's predestined, right? So those are polar opposite thinking. But no, neither of those things are necessarily true. We have the freedom to act. We have the independence to decide, but the consequences are predestined, right? So we shouldn't be lazy. We should act, but then we wait for the reaction. And an example is a farmer. So if the farmer sees there's no rain coming at this present moment in time, does that mean he shouldn't plow the land and get ready, plant all the seeds, etc.? No, because if he doesn't do that, then there's no hope for growing any crops, right? He should plow, he should plant the seeds, and he should patiently wait for the rain. Arjun actually wanted to renounce the fight. He didn't want to fight. He dropped his bow and arrow, like I said, and he wanted to renounce the whole world. And he's go to the forest. But Krishna said to him, you're a Kshatriya. You're not going to be able to do that because it's in your nature and it's your duty to fight. And you're not going to be content. Even though right now you think the best thing to do is step away from the battlefield for all the reasons he gave above, actually, you're not going to be content by not fighting. So what happens? So we should act, but with knowing the law of karma, it can help us to make the right decisions, to act in the right way. So our suffering can't reduce, But what it means is that we can stop creating more causes, right? So we know that effects are caused by causes. So we can be smart. What kind of seeds are we sowing for our future? Whatever seeds we plant now, they're definitely going to fructify. Whatever activities we do now, there's definitely going to be a reaction to it in the future, and we're going to have to accept the fruit, right? So what can we do? We can change our reaction to those actions as well. Whatever's coming our way, we can accept it and move on from it and be peaceful. So think of everyone around us like a wall, right? And what happens if you throw a ball to the wall? What's going to happen? It'll bounce back at you, probably with the same force as you threw it, right? So that means whatever we do to others is going to come back to us as well, right? Karma. So ask yourself, like, how do you want to be treated by people? What do you want from people, right? Tell me, what do you want from people? How do you want people to treat you? Anyone? Do you want them to treat you in a positive way, or do you want them to always kind of curse you and bring you down? Positive way, right? Yeah? So then whatever we want, we should do the same to others, right? Because we'll get that in return. If we give love, we'll get love, right? So, yeah, we should do what we want others to do for us. And number 6 is focus on yourself. So we spoke about a little bit about like dealing with other people, but focus on yourself. So imagine you're driving, right? And you look in the rearview mirror and you can see what the car's behind you, right? So imagine there is a driver who's not driving so well, which means you can't see them so well in the rearview mirror. Can you stop the car, get out of the car and tell him, can you drive properly so I can see you properly in my rearview mirror? You're not going to do that, are you? In fact, what you'll probably do is adjust your mirror, or maybe, like how you're driving in the lane or whatever, just so you can monitor and see that person better, right? So you make the change. You don't force the change like on someone else. So similarly, in life, we make the change for ourselves. And here, there's a nice acronym called CAR. So C stands for changing the changeable. Right? So, for example, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he managed to convince Arjun by the end of the Bhagavad Gita to fight. A stands for accept the unchangeable. So sometimes we're not going to be able to change something. We just have to accept it. Like, not everyone's going to listen to us and accept what we have to say. Like Duryodhan never listened to Krishna when Krishna came and said, stop this battle, like don't fight, and he came with, like as a peace messenger, but it didn't work. So eventually they accepted that Krishna, Duryodhan wasn't gonna change and the battle was gonna happen. And R stands for remove yourself from situations that are not conducive. So, if we're put into a situation where we just know things aren't gonna go right, we can't change things, it's difficult to accept as well, just take yourself away from it so that you're not going to offend others, you're not going to hurt others more and aggravate the situation more. When we're put into situations, we can be introspective and we can be humble and we can ask ourselves, what do I need to learn from this situation, right? There's always something for us to learn. We don't get put into situations by accident. There's always something for us to learn and for us to grow. And that's the best in life. What's success considered in life? It's growth, right? We can grow as people, we can grow in character. So we spoke a little bit about what can we learn from karma, right? But I said earlier that actually karma is what is binding us in this cycle of birth, death, old age, disease. So life after life, karma is the reason why we're taking birth in different bodies and we're stuck here in the material world. So how can we escape? How can we transcend karma? So actually, it's said that the root cause of all suffering is ignorance, or avidya is the Sanskrit word for it. So what's the opposite of ignorance? Knowledge, right? So in particular, spiritual knowledge. And we need knowledge. So how can we acquire knowledge? Actually, scriptures explain there's 3 ways to acquire knowledge. So one is called pratyaksha, which means sense perception. So from our senses, so like we see things and we can then take knowledge from it. Right? So for example, I'm looking at the clock there, I'm reading the time, so I know what time it is, right? The second is anuman, which is hypothesis or speculation. So we might kind of know a few things, and then through that, we make some logical inferences, etc. And the third is shabda praman, which is knowledge coming from a higher source, which is coming from Krishna in this case, from scripture. And shabda is transcendental because it's free from any defects from this material world, So like us, our senses are limited, right? Like when you have, those dog whistles, we can't actually hear them, but the dogs can hear them because they're at a different frequency to what our ears can actually take in. So we can't hear them. So that means our senses are limited, right? We also have like microscopes and telescopes. Why? Because from our eyes, we won't be able to see certain things like the stars up close or like microorganisms like in detail. We won't be able to see with our eyes. So we are limited. Our senses are limited. And even anuman, like which comes from like our reasoning, our intelligence, etc., that's also limited because it's based on what we've heard, etc. But shabda is above that. So it's free from any defects we have or anything that we've just been exposed to, So it's really important that we take knowledge from shabda, from higher authorities. So we take spiritual knowledge from, for example, the Bhagavad Gita on a regular basis, on a daily basis, because it can transform us. So imagine, like an airplane that's leaving from Los Angeles and it's flying to Italy. Flight is going to take about 12 hours if it stays on course. But if the nose of the airplane is 1 degree off course, south, then actually the destination is probably going to be somewhere in like Tunisia, Africa. Or if it's like 1 degree north, then it will end up either in Slovenia or Austria, somewhere in Europe. So actually that means just a small shift can actually take one to a completely different destination, So a small shift in our lives, like coming in contact with spiritual knowledge, just maybe even a few minutes every day, that can change the course of our lives as well, the destination. And this knowledge will help us to perform spiritual action. So I spoke about karma and vikarma, good action and bad action. Both of those things have results, right? So good action has a good result, bad action has a bad result. And I said, well, those results are still going to keep us bound. So how do we perform activities where like there's no result, right? So actually we hear that there's akarma. So when we understand what karma and vikarma are, then we can make the right choices and we can move to akarma, which are activities that don't cause us bondage in this world. So in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse number 4, Krishna explains what akarma isn't. So he says, not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. So he's saying, it's not that you abstain from work or you renounce things. That's not how you achieve freedom from reaction. But he explains in verse 9 in chapter 3 that work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. So what is he saying? He's saying, work for Krishna. He says, like when we surrender to him, then he'll take away the results of all our activities, and he'll spiritualize them. So in chapter 18, verse number 66, he says, Sarva dharman pratyajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yashyami ma suchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all sinful actions, sinful reactions. Don't worry, right? He's saying, don't worry, just surrender to me. Just perform your activities for me. Do what I'm saying, So only Krishna has the power to do this because he's above this material world, He's above the law of karma because he isn't from here, right? And he's fully spiritual, he's fully transcendental. So we can dedicate our activities to Krishna if we follow what he's telling us in the Bhagavad Gita. And There is a simple formula that I want to leave you with. What does that mean? What does spiritual activity actually mean? Well, it's a very simple formula, and we can summarize it as ABCD, right? So A stands for association. So, it said like, if we want to do something, we should be in the company of like-minded people, right? So similarly, if we want to go deeper into spirituality, let's associate with those who also are like-minded. So you've come to the temple today, for example, you've come to hear, you've come to take darshan, you'll be around people who are also like that. Take advantage, take opportunity to speak to people who are also like-minded. Books, so we spoke about reading the Bhagavad Gita, and there's many spiritual books out there which give us that knowledge, because we have to strengthen our intelligence to be able to make the right decisions, the right choices. Chanting, so in our practice, we actually chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, and that actually is said to cleanse us, cleanse us from reactions as well. It's very, very powerful. It's actually considered the Yuga Dharma, like what we should do in this age. All the potency is in chanting, it said, It's very, very powerful, and it's very simple as well. And diet. So who's had the prasadam here at the temple? Very nice, right? So Krishna prasadam. So whatever we do, whatever we even eat, we can offer it to Krishna first and then partake in the prasadam. And that also sanctifies us. That has a cleansing effect, a purifying effect. So yeah, I wanted to leave you with that. Thank you so much for coming. If anyone has any comments, any questions, any reflections, we've got a couple of minutes before Aarti. Thank you so much for coming. Hare Krishna.
Shri Shri Radha Gokula Nanda ki, Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Gaur Nitai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Bharati ka Shobha. Premi Gadada
Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Gopananda ki, Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Bhagavad ki. Everybody would like to either sit on the floor or put their hands together while I recite Pramadwani prayers. Jai Om Vishnupad Brahman Sabhagavaja Astas Shema. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prem se ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Asadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund ki Govardhana ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dhama ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dhama ki Jai. Shri Mathura Dhama ki Jai. Yamuna Mai ki Jai. Ganga Mai ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani ki Bhakti Devi ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinda ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Bhamananda Hari. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Hari.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Pralada Lada Dayine. Pralada Lada Dayine. Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha. Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha. Shila Tankana Kalaye. Shila Tankana Kalaye. Ito Nisimho Parato Nisimho. Ito Nisimho Parato Nisimho. Yato Yato Yamitato Nisimho. Yato Yato Yamitato Nisimho. Bahir Nisimho Ridaye Nisimho. Bahir Nisimho Ridaye Nisimho. Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapade. Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapade. Tavakara Kamalavarena Kamadbuta Shinga. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare. Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadish Jaya Nisimhadev Jaya Nisimhadev Nisimhadev Jaya Nisimhadev Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Shri Nisimhadev Bhagavan Ki Jai.
Carry on.